And so the guy who was asking for cigarettes, he said to my fellow traveler, he said, "Would you go around the corner with me to the convenience store and buy me a pack of cigarettes?" And my fellow traveler understandably said no. And then the guy who was asking for cigarettes got kind of hostile and he was like, "Oh, why you acting scared?" In the first part of this two-part video, I talked about attending the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival for the very first time on April 26, 2025. I'll put a link to that first video in the description box of this video. I had a great time seeing New Orleans legends like Irma Thomas, Harry Connick Jr., and the Preservation Hall Jazz Band, and I go into that in detail in the first video in this series. So in this video, I'll talk about my long trip home. So I flew down to New Orleans from my hometown of Columbus, Ohio, and I took the bus back. My thinking was that in doing it that way, it would save money because instead of having to pay for a hotel room in New Orleans, I could just sleep on the bus, which I did. I mean, I didn't get a total full night's sleep, like 7 or 8 hours, but I just kind of dozed on and off. But still, it was nice not to have to worry about driving. And there is no way I could have done that 20-hour one-way drive all by myself, all in one day, and made it back to be at my day job on Monday on time. I just could not have done that by myself. Thinking back, if I had planned better, I probably could have found either a red-eye flight where I could have slept on the flight, or I could have found an early morning flight out of New Orleans and just kind of slept at the airport and waited for the airport to open. But I didn't think about that. It was kind of a last minute trip that I planned maybe a week or two before the festival. So I ended up taking the bus. And the good thing about taking the bus was that it gave me an opportunity to see a lot of the country and to meet some interesting people. And I really liked riding the bus at night, listening to B.B. King's song Into the Night, which is the theme song to a 1985 movie with Michelle Pfeiffer and Jeff Goldblum. That Thriller is one of my favorite movies of all time. It was always on cable when I was a kid, and I was a TV junkie when I was growing up. One of the interesting people I met on the long bus ride home happened during a 3 hour layover in Indianapolis. Now, Indianapolis either doesn't have a bus station or the bus from New Orleans didn't drop us off at the bus station in Indianapolis. We got dropped off basically on a sidewalk in downtown Indianapolis to wait in the cold and the dark for 3 hours. And while it wasn't freezing cold, this was late April, it was definitely chilly. And all I had on to keep warm was a hoodie, kind of similar to the one I'm wearing now. And that definitely was not, in retrospect, the best decision. And of course, I had dressed light because I figured in New Orleans I wouldn't need a jacket at all. So I just wore the hoodie. And I definitely needed it when I got to Indianapolis because it was chilly. So during this 3 hour layover, waiting for my connection, I got to speaking to a fellow traveler and we just kind of made conversation, which kind of helped the time go by a little bit. Now, I was pinching pennies to make this trip to the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival fit into my budget, but the saying that you never know how good you've got it until you've walked a mile in someone else's shoes, that definitely applies to this situation. This fellow traveler told me he was from New York and he had also journeyed down south. He told me that when he was down south to save money, he had slept in like an oversized plumbing tube that he found under the bleachers at a high school. Now, I would never sleep outside unless I had to, unless I was camping or something. And to be totally honest, I could have bitten the bullet and I could have gotten a hotel room in New Orleans. I could have afforded to do that, or I could have kind of stretched my dollars and made it affordable. But I'm assuming this young man from New York, he would not have slept outside if he could have afforded not to. Now, this fellow traveler, he seemed like a really nice guy, but he was smoking cigarettes. I'm not a big fan of cigarettes, but to each their own. And while this fellow traveler was smoking cigarettes, someone wandering through downtown came up to him and asked him for a cigarette. And the fellow traveler said, "Sorry, I don't have any more." And so the guy who was asking for cigarettes, he said to my fellow traveler, he said, "Would you go around the corner with me to the convenience store and buy me a pack of cigarettes?" And my fellow traveler understandably said no. And then the guy who was asking for cigarettes got kind of hostile and he was like, "Oh, why you acting scared?" And my fellow traveler said, "I'm not scared. I'm just not going to go around the corner with you because I don't know you." And luckily, the guy who was asking for cigarettes, after a while, he kind of backed off and walked away. But mind you, there were no police, no security guards around. Me and my fellow travelers who were waiting for 3 hours on our bus to take us home or take us to the next stop in our destination, we were just out there fending for ourselves. You were just kind of on your own. Luckily, I'm a big, tall, strong man and I could defend myself if it came to that, but I don't want it to come to that. And at one point during the 3 hour wait, I went into a Five Guys restaurant just to kind of warm up. And I ended up ordering a burger and fries. And I wasn't even hungry because I had already eaten dinner on the bus. But I went into Five Guys just so I could be in a restaurant that had heat and a place to charge my phone. But eventually, in Five Guys, I started feeling kind of uncomfortable. Like the people behind the counter could kind of tell I was just milling around, killing time. So I chose to leave before I got kicked out. And I had dressed very comfortably for the long bus trip. I was just wearing the hoodie and sweatpants. So I did not feel comfortable going into one of the nice hotels in downtown Indianapolis and sitting in their lobby to kill time because of the way I was dressed. I was sure that the hotel staff could tell I was not a guest there and I was just in the lobby killing time. I decided not to even do that. I just kind of toughed it out in the cold with the handful of fellow travelers that were also waiting for the midnight bus to come and pick us up. And from that experience, it makes me wish that more money and resources were invested in our nationwide bus system. I wish bus and train stations were as nice as airports. And there's a reason for that discrepancy, in my opinion. It's because people who fly tend to have more money than people who take the bus and the train. And it's kind of a vicious cycle. It's like if bus and train stations were as nice and updated as they are in Europe and Asia and other parts of the world, people of all income levels would use them, just like people of all income levels use airports. But that's another topic for another day. So, my trip to the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival was an adventure, and that's an understatement. Luckily, I made it back in one piece, unharmed and unscathed. All in all, my trip to the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival was a lot of fun. If you're thinking about going next year or sometime in the future, I would highly recommend it. It's definitely worth the trip, no matter how you get there. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please leave a comment, share it, and subscribe to my channel.